Welcome back to the show. I am so excited for my conversation today with Joanna. So, Joanna, would love to have you start off by telling us who you are and what you do in the events industry.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Shenandoah, for having me. First of all, I'm Joanna, and I'm ultimately a connector. So I've been in the corporate events industry for about 20 years as an event planner, planning conferences, incentive trips, sponsorship events, the whole, caboodle. And in 2020, I left the industry to pursue a career in wellness where I got super obsessed with how people feel and how they thrive. And I became a positive psychology practitioner, meditation and mindfulness teacher, breathwork, dancing mindfulness facilitator, and art journaling instructor. And then, of course, like a lot of people, the universe nudged me back in the events industry as a freelance event planner. And I really started seeing, things a bit differently now having a wellness background. So, yeah, events were produced well. And of course, I know you talk about this a lot and we talk about this a lot. The agendas were packed, the content was front and center. But of course, I was really starting to um, feel something different and see something different. And I saw that people were exhausted and they were wearing busy as a badge of honor and they were feeling disconnected and they were stuck in information overload. So I really kind of decided to bridge both worlds through Hivergy, which is a corporate creative wellness agency of bridging the gap between my events and experience background and wellness. So do you want me to go into a little bit of Hivergy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so yeah, basically Hivergy sits at the intersection of a speaker agency and a wellness experience agency. So we really help organizations bring energy into their conferences, their events, their workplaces through speakers, activations, experiences through music, movement, art, creativity, and really focusing more on that like human lens and human connection. So that could be anything from a conference break, Zen lounges, retreats, team building activities, team socials, brand activations, holiday parties, things like that. So, where a lot of corporate wellness companies focus on reducing stress, preventing burnout, which is of course, very important. We at Hivergy focus on the other side of the equation. So that's bringing in more joy, more play, more creativity, more awe and wonder, connection, and essentially more energy. Because I really find that in the wellness industry, we focus on helping people just, survive, whereas we really are helping people come alive and thrive.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you and I have both been in the industry about the same amount of time. And I feel like when I first started doing the podcast, I used to ask people like what has changed in the industry since like lockdown restrictions opened up, but I feel like even now it's in the last year or so like there's been a big shift in what people are expecting from their events. So like what have you seen in the last couple years as you've been on like this wellness journey, but
Yeah.
also seeing how events and the industry are starting to ditch that like busy as a badge of honor, and that hustle culture is like not being celebrated the same way that it was kind of 5 and 10 years ago. So like what are you seeing in the way that team events are working, that
Mhm.
even any conferences are working? I think there's been this shift, like yes, post lockdown, but even in the last 2 years it's been different.
Yeah, no, I totally feel that. And I think one of the biggest shifts is that like human experience, that like human behind the attendee, and like what is the purpose of your event? I really feel like, yeah, years ago it was really focused on content sharing. Like you filled a room, you put someone on stage, you showed your slide deck, and that was your event. And then people came and they listened and they maybe like networked a little bit, but like as you said, like the world has changed drastically. People are needing, wanting, craving to get off their screens, off looking at slide decks. And there is a change of like this like top down kind of approach of like you have like it's just content sharing. So really it's events I'm seeing as the opportunity of getting off the screens, as I just mentioned, but like craving genuine connection and craving more energy. And people also don't want the like top down approach anymore. Like they don't want to just like another day, like looking at another slide deck or several slide decks and just like information overload. Like people want to participate, they want to contribute, they want to feel something, and they want to experience something. And I mean, like we know this, and there's like lots of research to support this too. Like Gallup is reporting an increase levels of loneliness and disengagement in the workplace. Microsoft has found employees that are way more distracted. I mean, like all of us, our phones, we're just always on a screen. And it's really about like what's the purpose of bringing your team or your clients together in meaningful ways? And the question just isn't like, what do we want people to know? But it's really becoming like, how do we want people to feel? And like, do we want them to feel connected, inspired, recognized, creative, like that they belong? And so this is where wellness comes in, right? So, like, and when I say wellness, I don't just mean like everybody sitting cross legged, meditating in a conference room. Like, I mean creating experiences that help people reconnect, obviously, with themselves and with each other. And, that could be anything from like movement, music, play, creativity, art, or even just having a meaningful conversation with somebody that they may like not normally have met. And also, using joy as a strategy. And I think people, like people might be like, okay, yeah, Joanna, that's like really nice, but like, what's the business strategy with that? And that's exactly like what we do and what we create is because all of this, like, joy isn't just like a nice feeling. It creates connection, it sparks creativity, it builds trust with people. It helps prime people to learn and to collaborate. So I think there is, especially as you said in the last year, like it's about experiences, it's about not hacking the agenda. And that's a really, really big thing that we're moving away from. Because also, a question I like to ask, just kind of even generally, like, how are you priming your attendees to take in this information? Because we are like sitting at a point in our lives and culture and world where we are getting just like so much information all the time. And with internal events, you are getting so much information. So like how are you priming your attendees to like retain that information? And that would be through moments of like play and creativity and movement and energy, that sort of thing. So I think there is really that shift from packing the agenda to like these very intentional, purposeful moments of wellness.
Yeah. And like so many great points there. But I think like the funniest thing is that sometimes it feels like people forget that they're designing agendas for humans and they're just like thinking about all the things that they need to like we need to just tell everybody all of these things. And now because video and Slack and like there's so many ways to communicate that is the most efficient way to use slide decks. And I think about the kind of the irony of people designing these agendas are the people that would hate to sit through those agendas,
Yeah.
right? Like how many times have I worked and like I come from a tech background, working a lot with sales teams who like they do not want to sit and like looking at a screen for 10 hours, but yet they're the ones designing the content to tell people that they have to sit and stare at a screen for 10 hours, right? And so I think like it's asking people to evaluate, well, what kind of event would you want to go to, right? And yes, I get that there's like so many people that need to give so many different updates and it's like, okay, but how can you make those updates shorter, condense them, weave them into programming in different interactive programming instead of just saying like, here's a slide deck with how we did last quarter and here's where we're trying to get to next quarter and like here's a slide that recognizes this person for selling a lot of stuff, right? Like, I think we have to have people ask themselves honestly, like, would I want to go to this event? And I think that, teaching them that they don't have to suck, right? Like they're like, well, this is just like it has to be this way, right? Like it has to be this presentation because, these executives have to speak and whatever. And it's like, okay, yes, like those messages need to get out there, but we also can do it in a way that doesn't suck for everybody.
Yes, beautifully said. I also think like it doesn't have to be that complicated. Like,
Yeah,
yes, you have like yes, you need to share like your content and information and all of that, but can you have micro moments of movement? Can you energize people, get them out of their seat with like awesome music and energizing? Like we have an amazing dance facilitator where she at conferences between breaks can get people up and moving. And yes, like I mean we all, shouldn't be like sitting for too long, but it's not just about that. It's like energizing, it's connection, it's how you can retain the information. So I
yeah,
think again it goes back to like it doesn't have to be that complicated. Like you can use these like micro moments of wellness to enhance your agenda, to enhance the experience of your attendees, to retain the information that you have taken so long to like put your deck together and the amount of meetings, you've had or
yeah.
your team's had to put all this information. So then like how are you priming them?
Yeah. Yeah. And so it kind of segues perfectly into my next question on how do you determine what activations are right for what groups? And I know like you'll often hear, oh, like our group won't do that, or like, oh, we don't have a lot of time, or oh, people are expecting it this way. So like how do you kind of determine, is it based on the demographic of the group? Is it based on the amount of people? I'm sure
Yeah.
timing also plays a huge part of it. But, if someone comes to you and says, okay, Joanna, you've sold me that we need to do better on our events,
Yeah.
where do I even start?
So basically, I'm not asking like, okay, like what kind of activation do you want? I'm really starting with like, well, what do you want people to feel? Do you want them to connect? Do you want them to reset? Like, do you want them to feel energized? Is there a need or a want for a sense of belonging? Like, do you want them to laugh, to create, to leave them feeling like connected? Like, all of those kinds of questions. So I dig a little bit deeper. It's like, what is the purpose of bringing people together? And also, what's imminent right now is like, what challenges are you trying to address? Like, are people feeling disconnected? Are they burnt out? Are teams remote or siloed? Is this about celebration, morale boosting, collaboration? Because the reality of it is like every experience has a different outcome. And I think what is important to kind of note is that it's about the outcome. So it's not necessarily about the activity. Like, oh, we're not going to do an activity. Okay, great. But like, what outcome do you want from this? So, like, as an example, like our teams or clients, don't really know each other. So we want people talking. So that's where something, or like getting to know each other a bit better. So I'd say, okay, like music bingo is the perfect activation, team building, or like event for you. Cause like, again, on the surface, it's, yeah, sure, it's like a trivia game, it's bingo. But what's actually really happening is we're creating a space of conversation, of laughter, of nostalgia, of connection. So people start sharing stories and singing along and interacting with their colleagues or their clients that like maybe in a way that they haven't, or maybe they've never met before. So this is just, yeah, one example of like, I'm not necessarily like selling music bingo, I'm selling the outcome. So when I'm determining what best activity, event, speaker, activation, whatever, it's like, okay, like what outcome do you want? Like, as one, there's like I've got the Joy Headshot Lounge. That's also a really good example of like, that's about recognition wrapped up in like the experience. So you're not just getting like a really joyful photo, but it's about feeling seen, about confidence, about you being celebrated. So many of our activities, activations are about the outcome, and we just use the experience as the vehicle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I'm sure as planners, when you go to your team, your stakeholders, and you kind of pitch this like out there, in quote unquote, like we're going to try something different. And, I always love like once in a while, saying to another planner, like, am I crazy or is this a good idea? Right. But like, so when let's say you're the planner who's like, okay, we're working to design this new, like, experience we do every single year. And I want to get my stakeholders on board, but like they're, a bit old school, they're a bit conservative, they're a bit risk averse. Like, what are some of the myths that you hear, or like kind of the challenges that you hear from people who want to bring this in, but they know that it's going to be like a hard sell within their organization? Like, what is it that you can kind of arm them with when they're rethinking it to kind of win people over to the idea of like that this makes the outcome better?
Yeah, so I think I love this question because a lot of what Hivergy focuses on is play, creativity, movement, fun, joy, like joy as a business strategy. So I think the biggest misconception is that they are nice to haves, but they don't function in our event, in our workplace, in our goals, and and that they're not like business, like strategic business tools. But like as an example, when we think about, let's say, like an executive retreat or strategy session, brainstorming days, team offsites, like clients often jump to the agenda as like the first step. Okay, so we got to get everybody in a room. So we need a venue. We've got to like do the slide deck. We have to solve this problem. But my question is always like, how are you actually prepping people to do their best thinking, to like arrive in clarity, right? Like, because a lot of people arrive at events stressed, they're distracted, they're overwhelmed, they're jumping straight from emails or Teams calls or whatever. So you're asking people to just like show up and be collaborative and be like, have that clarity to retain information, to be creative without actually doing anything. So I often like use positive psychology, right? So research around psychological safety shows that people contribute more ideas, they take more risks, they collaborate more effectively. And one of the experiences is involving play, movement, creativity, art, connection can be so powerful. So that really helps break down barriers and create conditions for better conversations, more solutions, problem solving. The other thing is the fascination in neuroscience around novelty and neuroplasticity. So when we engage in something new and creative, playful, or unexpected, sorry, we activate different parts of our brain, and that creates opportunities for new connections, new ways of thinking. So that's exactly what you want when you're asking a team to innovate, to solve challenges, to think strategically. But like old school way is like, no, we just like invite them to the venue, we give them like coffee and pastries, or like whatever, and we're in a room all day and we're supposed to solve problems and be strategic, right? Or just like retain information or get the updates. But that's like not at all how the human behind the attendee works. So why are we planning these events not even thinking about the human behind the attendee to then like execute your goals and your outcomes? So I get it. Like people are like skeptical, especially when it's like, oh yeah, like we have a play session. And like, what does this have to do with work? But then once they get started, they're realizing that they're creating, they're laughing, they're experimenting, they're sharing ideas. And then suddenly the energy shifts in the room. And then people start listening differently. They start sharing their ideas differently. They become more curious. They become more open. They are more open to different perspectives and ideas. They're less concerned about perfectionism. They're less concerned about the perfect answer. And that's where the most like innovative like thinking happens. And same thing applies to, client events. Oftentimes like client entertainment was looked at like a dinner or a happy hour or a sporting event or a suite at a game. And look, like I get it. People love like a Blue Jays game, but in today's attendees and clients, they're looking for something way more novel, more interactive, and they want experiences and they want to share stories. They want to participate. They want something to talk about a week later. And maybe that's a creative activation or that's music bingo, as I've mentioned, like literally getting complete strangers singing and laughing together, or like, clients that like you kind of know a little bit, or yeah, your team, maybe you're a remote team. So like, but these are examples of wellness experiences, and it gets people collaborating and something they feel, and of course that they'll remember who they met, remember conversations that they've had while creating something. So yeah, at the end of the day, like whether it's like a strategy session, a team like offsite, a conference, you're not just gathering people in a room. You're creating conditions for better thinking, for stronger relationships, collaboration, deeper connection, more meaningful outcomes. So yeah, sometimes it's not about just like adding another slide in your slide deck. It's creating an experience that people will show up differently for.
Yeah, and I think like when I've pitched to clients or when I worked internally, a new and different kind of activity or session, a lot of times the pushback is, oh, well, no one's going to do that. Like, no one's going to get up in front of their colleagues and dance. And like for some people, like it is kind of their worst nightmare. They'd rather be on stage than be the dancer. But like, but it pushes people out. And I kind of going back to like where we started of people are still human. Like
Yeah.
even if they're like the groups that are usually more buttoned up and
Yes.
very like conservative in the like way that the business operates, thinking of like banking and legal and just big companies that are known for being kind of very rigid. I still go back to yes, but they're still human attendees, right? And those humans like to have fun. They, like you said, they like to see something different. They'll remember something different because it like connects with them more. And it's again remembering that they are craving something different and
Yeah.
fun. And they're still humans, right? And so there's nothing better than when you pitch, what seems like a wild idea when you first pitch it. And then when it executes, it goes so great. I did an event a couple years ago where we had the live karaoke band, right? And most people are thinking, like, people hate karaoke, it's stressful, but the best part about live karaoke band is it's a short list of songs that they'll perform, so they're only bangers, and they won't let you fail. Like they're there to just back you up and make it fun for everybody involved. And like, I've been at music bingo where you see people like shimmying, and you also see like even when people get upset because someone else doesn't know the song, like, what do you mean you don't know this song? And you're like, oh no, like I'm aging myself, like when someone the other day didn't know who Cardinal Official was. But I just sit
Laugh
with
and
that for
it
a moment,
creates
right?
connection.
Yes.
And I think that
Yeah.
like that's the biggest thing is that yeah, even the most like introverted people, you get them into a group and it doesn't mean, like we had a music bingo and it was for legal and banking and they had the best time. One, you got people like out of their norm, having fun. Music really like boosts mood. And again, like the nostalgia aspect of it. And it's friendly competition. Like, who doesn't love a little bit of friendly competition as well? So I think that, yeah, like, again, it's coming back to like, what is the outcome? And then having like the science and stuff behind it to those very like traditional, even like the traditional ones, again, what we've been saying, like the human behind the attendee.
Yeah. I always tell people if you're struggling for a team activity, just put people in competition with each other.
Hmm.
They go nuts, right? Like they
Yeah.
love it. And we've touched on it, but like people, it's the information overload, but
Yeah.
it's also like I think also as a culture is moving away from just standing around and drinking at events, like, and like I do drink alcohol, and I know that some people do and some people don't. And do I prefer when there is alcohol at an event? Usually, yes, but I don't need that to be the only thing I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want that to be the only thing I'm doing. Like, people are looking for experiences that they can enjoy whether they're drinking or not. And for
Yeah.
so long, the events were so focused on if you weren't drinking, like you were just eating a
Yeah.
lot of mini spring rolls, right? Like
Yeah.
what else were you doing? Because there wasn't anything else going on,
Yeah.
right? So if you still like if your team is one that does like having alcohol or doesn't, you now have this option of engaging people who are reducing the amount that they're drinking, that don't drink at all,
Yeah.
and making it not just about like what you're consuming. Like how boring to just like talk about like what you're consuming, unless it's like some crazy activation of like, oh, we, that you can do that too. But you know, people want something that they can't just get at home, right? Like, if they wanted to have a beer at home, they can do that quietly and like with the people they know, right? Like, how are you bringing it to the next level that it's actually going to be something that they're not just like thinking about their emails piling up, they're thinking about how much their feet hurt, they're thinking about how
Yeah.
tired they are, about how they're
Yeah.
missing their kids' soccer game or whatever
Mhm.
because of this. Like, you need to give people more of a reason to want to stay and engage than, oh, there's a bar.
Yeah. No, people are craving connection. People are
Yeah,
craving novel experiences. So like I don't drink. I haven't drank in like 7 years. And I like it's so I find it very difficult to go to a networking event and just like if I don't know anybody, I'll have like, a mocktail or a ginger ale or whatever, sure. And then like what am I doing? Like if I don't feel comfortable, not everybody feels comfortable walking up to somebody that they may not know or starting conversation. I also really hate small talk. So something that I find easy and that helps me connect with people is like if like I'm the attendee and I'm able to do an activation, that's a talking point. That's a connection point. That's something
yeah,
that like engages all my senses. I'm doing something and maybe we're like doing something together. And that's an easy way to have conversation with people. But standing with a drink in hand and as you said, a spring roll is not like that's not worth leaving home for, right? So you
yeah,
really have to think about like what are the connection points? Is it about, yeah, like bonding, laughter, confidence, like reflection, play, creativity? Like you just need like we need something to do.
yeah. Yeah, there we go. Perfect way to end. We're coming up to time. We need something to do,
We need
and your
something
event
to
doesn't have to suck. Those are two
do.
takeaways.
Yes.
I know we could talk about it all day,
Yeah.
because we often do.
Yeah.
But if people want to find out more about how they can make their events better for their attendees, better for their ROI, how can they find out more about Hivergy and connect with you?
For sure. So you can connect with me on my email, hello at wearehivergy. My website, wearehivergy.com. I'm on IG and also LinkedIn. So yeah, feel free to connect with me. Would love to add that energy, that connection, that laughter, that joy as a business strategy to your events. I also just started a Substack called The Future is IRL. So feel free where to take a look at that, where I'm sharing for event planners, HR leaders, just ideas, insights, lessons at events, as well as like personal wellness tips. Yeah. So that's where we can
Amazing.
connect. And thank you so much, Shenandoah, for having me on your podcast.
Of course. Thanks so much for being here.